eyes were doing circles, like a compass without north. I was counting all the seconds. I've been walking back and forth. The clock was missing numbers. The street forgot its name. Every thought I carried felt borrowed, bent and strange. You spoke in quiet riddles, like rain against the glass. And I felt something loosen that I didn't know I had. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect line, just a frequency that holds through time. I've been trading paper promises at corners of the day, watching shadows sell their stories, then quietly walk away. But you stood like a question that refused to disappear, like a song I didn't know, but somehow always hear. Your laugh moves slow and sideways, like smoke across a room. I followed it instinctively, like moths follow the moon. Every step between us shortened, though we didn't move at all, like gravity remembered why it had to fall. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect sign, just a signal that survives the night. If love's a map with half the roads erased, we'll read it by the scars we trace. No fireworks, no closing door, just echoes learning what they're for. Now the world keeps spinning stories it insists are true, but I hear a softer rhythm every time I look at you, like something ancient waking underneath the noise, a quiet stubborn harmony that never begs for choice. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. In the spaces between the lines is a connection learning how to shine. No names carved in stone tonight, just two voices finding light, holding on. Not too tired, listen until it feels right. Oh, 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 oh,
Okay, did that transition properly? You know, it's always, yeah. Of course, the equipment and microphone issues always start, always. Just a few seconds before you go live. Oh, now I understand. All right, I'm trying something a little bit different today, which is I'm trying to Substack live directly on the PC, trying to get ready for when I travel. And now I get it. So I apologize for everybody who's seeing the shorts where my head is like this big. I didn't realize that Substack kind of organizes the layout of the screen for you to see that. Substack, by the way, is an amazing company. I don't know if any of you have followed Chris Best on X or on Substack, but that team at Substack, they are really on the ball with new things. Like it's amazing. And they come up with new ideas for how to share and distribute content and all that sort of stuff before I even think of it. And I'm usually pretty good with that stuff. So they're amazing. Good morning, Beth. Happy Saturday. Wildflower, good morning. You're from Edmonton, a city I know fairly well. I've been there a couple of times. And free Alberta, free as an unchained, yeah. My favorite place in Alberta is going to be no surprise, is probably Banff. I've been there countless times in my life, having family from Calgary. So for those of you who are in America and you don't know Alberta or particularly Banff, you got to go. You really got to check it out. It is absolutely amazing. But first, I want to wish you all a good morning and the best morning of your life. And we're going to do that. We're going to start today and ensure that this is the most positive experience you've had of any Saturday for the rest of your life by starting with, you know what it is. It's going to be, for those of you new here, the new land acknowledgement for Canada. That's right. Have you heard of this? I think this is actually on the books from the Canadian government. I think they're going to be, we've been doing land acknowledgements in schools, brainwashing little kids for many, many years. So we're now going to be, the government, I think it's now official, if I'm not mistaken. They've moved over to this land acknowledgement to help your kids out of the echo chambers that they've been trapped into. And the new land acknowledgement doesn't always require a cup of coffee or an amazing cup of coffee like this. Don't be a chooch. Shout out Robin. Thank you for the cup. But the new land acknowledgement goes something like this, for those of you who have not heard it. But this is, I believe, I'm pretty sure, this is official government policy. And it says this: we would like to gently acknowledge that we're standing on the traditional territory of, well, whoever was here savagely killing each other at the time. Anyway, they aren't in charge anymore. We're here until the Americans take over. Sip. It feels good starting with that kind of level of positivity. And I hope you're having an amazing day. There's so much stuff that's been going on right now, just crazy nonsense, not just in, legacy and alternative media, which I think I've laid out the case that is really just captured media. But it's really crazy what we've been seeing. I mentioned a little bit Rupert Lowe and the Restore Britain party that has been launched yesterday on Tim Pool. Tommy Robinson was the guest, did an excellent job laying out the case of what many of us have been trying to inform Canadians and Westerners on for many, many years. And he's become really good. He really knows, this sort of stuff. It takes time, right? Like, it takes time to understand how to sell the message and all that sort of stuff. So he did really good. So congratulations to Tommy Robinson. We see our friend Mamdani, the Muslim Brotherhood garbage king of New York, continues to torpedo himself only 3 weeks in. So that is good news as well. But we're going to try to be positive, but there's some, obviously, the news is always negative, right? And I try to pull in some positive things from here and there, usually in tech, but there's so much going on today in terms of the global culture war that I thought it'd be a good time just to let's really focus in on that. And then we'll wind up the weekend tomorrow with some, I don't know, more tech related, positive changes to your world perspectives that we all need. But the other thing is you can't let things really get to you, and there's always going to be noise around you. And as I've tried with people, in speeches, discussions, all that sort of stuff, the skill is to be surrounded by a lot of noise and not let it consume you, and to be able to distinguish between the two and be able to focus on all the positive things that happen in your life, irrespective of all the negative nonsense that is happening around you, because that's never going away. That's always going to be there. Good morning, Risa. Hey, Jess. Maureen, good morning to you as well. Rupert is the bomb. Yes, he's doing great. I'm going to go over his video at some point. There's one thing that I'm like, okay, why do we have to do this? But other than that, we're good and we're solid. Jess says, did you see the prayer sideshow in New York City yesterday? Yes, I did. And as many of us predicted many years ago that this would happen if we didn't abandon our current strategy. And it is. And that is why myself and many other people have been outspoken about this nonsense for some time. Some of us have been lawfared for speaking up, which is, the Muslim Brotherhood's favorite tactic, is just to lawfare anybody who calls out what they're doing. You need to talk to Castle's Rock in Edmonton. The owner is a great guy, does so much for education system. Gavin, I think his name, born a few years ago, has 100 staff. Okay, I'll look into that after, Scott. Okay, everybody yells at me when I read the comments in the middle, so I will try to scroll up to them towards the end, and hopefully we can get through my presentation and comments. Well, the presentation, we're just hanging out talking sort of thing. So first thing I found interesting yesterday, just a little side thing around tech, is T-Mobile, which is one of the major carriers in the United States, for those of you in Canada. They've introduced an instant translation feature for T-Mobile carriers. So there are two features they're unveiling, which are kind of innovative. One is connection to Starlink with the new iPhones that are coming out. But the other thing is instant translation. So you are talking to somebody on the other side of the world, doesn't speak English, vice versa, you don't speak their language, whether it's, I don't know, Russian or Cantonese. I don't know, you just, it will instantly translate, almost like a Babelfish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I think this is another one of those privacy versus security questions. But to tack on to something that Scott brought up in terms of communication, and shout out to everybody, thank you for the kind words, by the way. He brought up this idea that anybody who knows communication would know that you're going to have a stronger relationship with somebody who you can speak to in their language and not through a translator. And that may be, a large part of our friction throughout history has been the fact that people could not speak the same language. This is not his words, I'm just kind of adding to it. And this sort of feature, if it's available for T-Mobile, I'm assuming governments have had this for a very short period of time as well. Do you agree? Do you agree that a feature like that could actually, calm some of the friction that people have, and you'd be able to talk to people who, you think you don't understand each other because you're completely foreign to one another. But then when you can hear each other when in your native tongue, all of a sudden that friction seems to fall by the wayside. So I don't know. What do you think? That's just kind of my two thoughts. I can imagine if Trump gets on the phone with Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping speaking in Chinese, which, as I've learned, it's not Mandarin, it's actually Chinese, and Trump is speaking in language, but they hear each other in their native languages. Well, that might really help with the friction, depending on the word selection that it's used. And this is very important. This is something you learn when you learn persuasion. The emotional effects that certain words have to different people. And I gave the example yesterday that somebody I know, if you say, have a good day, they interpret that as a middle finger, because in their work, have a good day usually follows, some sort of negative legalese letter or email that was very subtle and very sarcastic. So, we all process language a little bit different. But you know what? Maybe it's a start. Who knows? But I just thought that was interesting for us to mention. So let me know if you get the chance to cover that. The other thing that was going around yesterday, I'm trying to get away. I'm gonna have a few other things. I know I want to get away from the 5 stories that everybody talks about, but a couple of these are actually interesting, so I just want to mention them in passing. That Canada is now poorer than Alabama, and statistics came out yesterday that Canada's a much poorer is poor. The whole country is poorer than just the lone state of Alabama. And there's always been this sort of, rural versus urban attitude that's over the past couple generations in the Western world, not just in the United States, that they kind of look down upon more rural areas. They call them flyover country. But so I'm going to get to that in a second because I think that's an unfair interpretation of Alabama. But first, I do think it's interesting, and we need to acknowledge that I believe this is still the case, that Ontario, which has less than half the population of the state of California, I believe it has double the debt of the state of California. So Ontario's what, 12 million, 15 million people, something like that. And California is 40 million. Yet somehow the province of Ontario, which is where Toronto and Ottawa are, has double the debt of California. And we've decided to engage in a trade war with the country that controls 76% of our GDP. Yeah, things are not going to end well. And I'm already seeing really bad signs in transportation. But anyways, I talked a little bit about that yesterday. So do you think our politicians need to be held personally liable for economic damage that they're causing? Like, do you think Carney, with his stupidity, should he be personally and financially liable for destroying Canada's economy, whether he intends to do it or not? I mean, maybe there has to be some punishment for gross negligence, which is what I would describe him, Anyways, that's okay, Risa, that's a good comment. I'll get to that after. But anyways, back to Alabama. So they kind of use Alabama as a doppelganger to, like, oh, look, it's the people in Alabama. And I got to tell you, I don't know if you've heard of Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville, Alabama, which is, cute little city. It has the highest number of PhDs and academics the highest percentage of any city in the United States. That's right. Alabama has the highest rate of PhDs and academics in the entire United States. And most of them are around engineering. Didn't know that. So the people in New York or Central Casting in California, who are always trying to tell people, oh, Alabama's like Deliverance. No. They're more educated than you. And part of this is because, in that particular area, like I said, it's mainly engineering. In Huntsville, Alabama, is where the Space and Rocket Museum is. And there's a number of defense contractors, I believe, and space-related contractors. I mean, the same thing, defense contractors, but used for NASA and space. They're all, not all, but many of them are housed in and based in Huntsville, Alabama. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I was at that museum. It's been like, I don't know, 10 years maybe. But I believe the Saturn rockets were developed in Huntsville for the Apollo space program, as well as much of the space shuttle program was developed and engineered in Huntsville, Alabama. So I think we need to get away from, the flyover states are all Deliverance. I mean, that's just kind of the racist bigotry of low expectations, like they like to say, of the racist bigots in Hollywood that always want to paint everybody other than themselves as being enlightened. Huntsville is a quite enlightened city, and a nice little city. So if you ever want to go see a nice place and get away, that's something completely different. And it's very slow. It's very chill. It's very, very chill, but very, very well educated people. So it's quite nice. So I love this. Colombia a place that those of you who've been watching for some time is a country I know very, very well and have spent a lot of time and do tend to spend some time there. Yeah, that's right, Maureen. The liberals have champagne taste on beer budget. Let's say liberal party people, yeah, for sure. So Colombia, which I know extremely well and have been going for many, many years, is in the news for a couple of reasons. And I've posted a couple of times that the the rate of how naive Canadians and some Americans can be, but particularly Canadians, it borders on negligence as well, as far as I'm concerned. Like, that's why we're overrun by all these extremists and they get positions in government. It's because we're naive and stupid. I mean, it's the only way to describe it, right? So, an example, I thought this would be a nice little window to see what the rest of the world is actually like, especially for the people on Blueski who are watching. I'm sure there's a couple of you because I've already been in touch with some of them. The story that was out yesterday that made the headlines around the world, definitely around Latin America for sure, that a 23-year-old Colombian hitwoman who, with model looks, her call sign, the doll, which is La Muñeca, she was head of a hit squad acting on behalf of the cartels. And the cartels in Colombia, by the way, are Mexican. None of them are Colombian cartels. Her name is Karin Julieta Ojeda Rodriguez. So she's very pretty, 23 years old. I mean, she's typical Colombian. She looks, that's what Colombia looks like in certain cities. Maybe she's a little bit more Cali, but anyways. So apparently she started this career of killing people when she was still in high school. Think of the children, Tucker Carlson says. What about the children? So yeah, she started as a hitwoman in high school. She joined Los de la M. It's Los de la M Rosa and she went through the ranks over 5 years, as one of the journalists noticed. And she apparently had an iron character of determination. So yeah, she was quite vicious and ruthless, apparently. She was suspected of several murders, but was detained after after massacring her ex-boyfriend. He owed her money, and she decided to eliminate him, taking taking an acquaintance's nickname. And this was funny to hear American journalists refer to her nickname and laughing about it. Gorda Sicaria. So that means the fat killer. And it says, according to one version, the crucial moment was when Karin failed to pull the trigger, and there was a guy that was there to kill on behalf of Gorda Sicaria. All right, so everybody's laughing about, they call her the fat killer, but she's skinny. Okay, well, not that this is neither here nor there, but again, the use of language is contextual and cultural. In Colombia, not that anybody cares, but gorda or gordo, gordita, gordito, literally it means fat. I get that, but that's not what it means. That's a kind of term of endearment there. Everybody calls everybody gordo. It's kind of like bro or my sister or my love or whatever. They just say gordo. I don't know why, but that's I can never find the origins of it. I don't know if it's with the Botero statues, very famous Colombian artist who made all these very large statues of obese people, and for some reason they were very popular. Or maybe they're popular because everybody calls themselves gordo and gorda. But that's that's the gorda sicaria, when you're like, they called her fat, he. It's like, no, that's what everybody calls each other there. That's just how it is. But if you look at the photo that I posted as the thumbnail, which is in the New York Post, I think, as part of the official photos of release, you'll notice a motorcycle that's there. So there's a gun and a motorcycle. That is how they kill in broad daylight, the ratones, or the rats. and they look like Antifa. So they're dressed all in black and their motorcycles all blacked up. And it could be 12 in the afternoon, and they just, in Colombia, you can drive. I mean, there's better lane discipline now. Before it was a nightmare. They just drive between the cars in the lanes, and they pull up to your car and pull out a gun, bang, 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 and then drive off, and no one ever finds out who it is. That's how things happen. Anyways, I'm not going to get into more stories, but you get the idea. But this is also the naivete of people in the West, that this is how the world works. There's also another phenomenon in Colombia called the Black Widows. So I've had this conversation with some, and it's not just Colombia, Latin America, especially Mexico, and now it's making its way into Florida. So thank you for mass migration, for bringing the cultural enrichment of certain places in the world. So the Black Widows are when I've walked a few people through this in the Bitcoin space, particularly, who are going down to Colombia for the first time. The rules are the unwritten rules. And again, this is how the world really works. You go to a bar and you're a guy, doesn't matter age, you could be middle-aged, younger, older, doesn't matter. You see two women at a table in a bar who are really stunning and gorgeous, which is very common there. You do not talk to them. You do not talk to them, especially when they start flirting with you, because what they're going to do is they're going to flirt with you and give you the impression that they're very interested in you. And you'll be like, oh my God, I love Latin America. You love it until they scopolamine you and rob you of everything in your hotel. And usually they give an overdose of scopolamine and that kills you. So yeah, culture. Yeah, that's what happens. Welcome to the third world. But hey, open borders, mass migration. Let's bring everybody in and check from all over the world. Let's bring in cartels into Canada. What could go wrong, right? What could possibly go wrong? I haven't heard about scopolamine / Black Widows in Canada yet, but I think it's probably just a matter of time. So there's my travel tips for Colombia. Oh, and equally, you go to, I don't know, a place, a bar, or whatever, and there's one girl there by herself, and she comes up to you and starts flirting with you. Either she's a hooker, or she's a Black Widow and gonna scopolamine you, or maybe both, which is common there as well. There's things to look for to avoid that, but I'm just giving basic travel tips. This also goes for when you go to like vacation spots like Cancun and Cartagena and whatever. If you go off the beaten path, you need to speak Spanish and understand the cultural differences, right? But Alabama is still the poorest state in the U.S. Is this not correct? Could be. I do know they, for many, many years, and I think they still do, have the worst education system in the entire U.S., which is funny, that their education system is so bad, yet they have such a high degree of PhDs, engineers, and academics in that state. But that's primarily engineering. I think it's just kind of a very bifurcated culture. So I'm referring specifically to Huntsville is like that. But the rest of the state of Alabama, yeah, I'm sure it might be a little bit deliverance. Because guess what else? You know what else is very, very deliverance-y? New York State. Have you been to New York State outside of the cities? I go there quite frequently. You'll feel like you're in the central casting version of Huntsville. And by the way, rural Canada is not like that when you go out of the cities. Like some places, yeah. But we're some of those nunnik maniacs who came to the trucker convoy to sabotage us. The mouthy a-holes. Where do you think they came from? They came from deliverance parts of Canada too. So that happens everywhere. It's not just in Afghanistan and Pakistan that you have these weirdos. It's everywhere in the world. And so Alabama is not unique in that, and neither is parts of Canada. We have confused people all over the world. All right, so that is La Muñeca, the doll, the Colombian hitwoman, which is pretty fascinating. So another story out of Colombia. Colombia's in the news big time. So crazy. And by the way, you think I'm nuts, people will think I'm a little crazy, but that's kind of what I like about Latin America. The whole, it's a little bit of the Wild West. I think part of the problem, the reason we're so naive in the West, is because everything's so safe. Everything becomes so safe, you turn your brain off, right? And I do like to be a little bit in the Wild West and understand that, like, and I think we all will benefit if we get away from the obsession with safety and actually learn to live dangerously a little bit. Like, guess what? Life is dangerous. I get it, everybody's scared, but grow a spine. The world is difficult. That's just my perspective. You might think that's a little bit harsh. I get that. But that's kind of what I see in terms of the charm down there. So this other story from Colombia, and I posted on this, that people in the West will think, oh my God, this is shocking, because again, it's so safe. Whereas people in Latin America would be like, well, yeah, of course. There's no surprise. It's just how they are, right? Because they know, people are not good. People are incentivized to, and that could bring people across the spectrum. So a Colombian Instagram model is accused of running a child sex trafficking ring. Oh, there you go. So Colombian Instagram model moonlighted as an international underage sex trafficking madam. Okay, so the first thing I have with this is, with the kind of the progressive people, you can't suck and blow at the same time. So I mentioned this before. I don't do there's all actors. No. There's actors and actresses, because that's our language. Just like all of Spanish is a gendered language. Guess what? You don't like it? Too bad. I don't care. But they want to have it both ways. It's interesting. When it comes to actors, which is probably the highest level of intellect for a lot of people in that philosophical framing, there's everybody's equal, everybody's an actor. But when it comes to sex trafficking, not everybody's a pimp. There's pimps and the softened version of it, the madam. No. If we're going to do pimps and madams, we're going to do actors and actresses. You might think I'm nuts for bringing that up, but just my little personal pet peeve. But anyways, the trial for Liliana de Carmen Campos Puello, is now underway in Cartagena. Campos Puello was convicted of federal heroin trafficking in New York in 2002, so she gets around. And she also goes by La Ronca, which is the husky-voiced woman, and claims that all the women over in her prostitution ring were over the age of 18, because prostitution is legal in Colombia, and I know my conservative friends get really upset with that sort of stuff. I am more libertarian on that, because when you live in the third world and you see how little opportunities people have there, doesn't mean I agree with it, but you understand why people go down that direction. And it's great to believe and have faith, but that doesn't pay their bills, and things are really can be really difficult, especially when you're in real smaller towns, more rural areas throughout Latin America. And especially if there's, drug traffic, the cartels that control the areas, or increasingly madrasas, which is what's, Diana Salazar dealt with in Ecuador recently. I posted an article about that in the Substack. So 17 others were also charged in this trafficking ring, so it wasn't just her. And these, you wonder why, all of a sudden, how come there's another sex trafficking ring, this girl in Colombia who may have been tied to this sort of stuff and all that sort of stuff. Oh, hey, Monica, it's good to see you, sweetheart. She says, you can say South America, that's okay. Latin America doesn't exist geographically. Yes, but culturally it does, right? So from a Canadian perspective, and this becomes difficult for some people here, Mexico down is Latin America. That's kind of the framing for it. But, whatever, we have our own perspectives. But sometimes I think it's important, like when you look at Colombia and Mexico, The cartels have moved out of Colombia. They were all but wiped out, and then they established themselves in Mexico, and now they've come back to Colombia and are causing havoc there. But I think that's going to end when Petro is out of power in May, and hopefully we'll see what happens. But why is there such a focus on, like, why does this story come out that there's a sex trafficking ring? This girl, this Instagram model. I mean, that's the analogy Scott would say frequently, which is so accurate. If you know media, you understand how this works. That he would say the story of dog bites man is not a story, but man bites dog. Well, that's unusual. That becomes a story, and that's, because of what we're seeing with all the Epstein files. The way it works, I've seen people who are victims of this, and this is how media manipulates all of you. Is it's always, I've told people before, if you're upset with a publication, who is the editor at large? Go to that person. Who's the editor at large making all the decisions? That's the person. That's the fake news person you should be angry with and upset with. Because what they do is when they see a trend online that's getting lots of traffic, they'll really lean on their journalists and staff. I mean, now everything is becoming AI generated stories, and most publications have gotten rid of investigative journalist departments. But when they had them, they would lean on those departments and say, in this case, if Jeffrey Epstein was popular, they'd say, get me a sex trafficking story. I don't care what it is, and you have to have something on my desk by the end of the day. Well, guess what happens? Well, they start making things up. They start fabricating, they start distorting, because it's get on my desk or you lose your job. Okay, well, there's the incentive. It's kind of the philosophy that I've said in relation to Scott, and he's brought up. But I think everything is, most institutions are Dilbert cartoons. And there's an example of the Dilbert filter, right? We need a story, get a sex trafficking story. Oh, I don't know any sex traffickers. I don't care, get one. Okay, I guess I can infer one if I need to. And the problem with this phenomenon is people care about what they hear most frequently, right? And this is why you'll see, we're going to talk later about Tucker Carlson and Huckabee, when they talk about all the other strifes and, the 500,000 people who are genocided in Syria. Was 100,000 that were genocided in Yemen, if I'm not mistaken. The Sudan has a civil war where people are genocided. People don't care about that, but they are hyper focusing on one country in the Middle East they know nothing about. It's because through repetition, they hear it over and over again, and that becomes what they care about. And by the way, that's you, that's me, that's everybody. That's how we're programmed. And if you understand that, then you can start to kind of hedge against that, as long as you expose yourself to other things. So basically, people care about what they hear about most frequently, and we're all wired that way. Okay, so from Colombia on to Canada. Canadian Jess. Wild West rules are simpler. Yes, they are. Imported? No. Maureen, you're talking about the engineers in Alabama? No, they're not imported. They are, maybe from different parts of the country, just because there's so many contractors there, and so much of the space program development was heavily biased towards that region. That's why, and they're mostly, at least in my experience, being in Huntsville, there's not a lot of diversity there. That's for sure. They were all American, like they're Scots-Irish or Southerner or whatever, right? And by the way, I think I made that clear in another stream, but we'll talk more about that, the cultural makeup of the United States, the Scots-Irish versus Puritan versus Quaker and all that sort of stuff. All right, so we're going from Colombia to Canada, another cartel overrun S-hole in the world. So we now know that Canada is, the entire country is poorer than the state of Alabama, which RISA is saying is the poorest state in the United States. Maybe, Risa, if you can, just double check that. Let me know if that's the case. Because I just give some confirmation if you could, or if anybody can, because I'm curious to know that. So first, we're going to give some context to explain this, because this was in the news, and it's amazing. It's, again, the naivete of Canadians just glossing over stuff or ignoring it. The ability for people to ignore stuff or not see it is amazing. When you understand how people are programmed, you know why. So the context of this is a statement that was in Parliament many years ago, into, I think, his third year, if I'm not mistaken, second or third year. And this was a statement by Justin Blackface Trudeau when they were caught basically smuggling ISIS fighters into Canada at a time where the Americans were wiping out ISIS fighters in the Middle East when they were genociding the Yazidis. Another genocide no one cares about, right? Because they don't hear about it over and over again. And the returning ISIS fighters, the statement that they will be a powerful voice for de-radicalization was said in Parliament. Think about that. He said the returning ISIS fighters will be a powerful voice for de-radicalization. How does that work? Like the mafia will be a powerful voice for how to run a legitimate business. Well, excuse me? I mean, it's the complete opposite. It's the worst form of lying. It's gaslighting, which, as I think Scott correctly pointed out, that causes mental illness. That's what the blackface regime did throughout all its years of gaslighting and saying things like Canada has no cultural identity, Canada is a colonial racist project, that sort of stuff. Anyways, that causes mental illness, which I think we were seeing. It's quite evident we're seeing that. But anyways, all right, so that's the context of what's happening, okay? Now, what has been announced is that the Canadian government is going to have now a special, I guess it's a new visa, a visa program for military-aged and military-trained people to get a visa to come to Canada to join the Canadian military. How stupid are these people? Now, I don't know. Do you see the problem? The problem, this kind of goes back to this issue of mass migration and what many people were dealing with in the security world, trying to advise the government, the blackface regime that would not listen no matter what, because they're full of Muslim Brotherhood terrorists in their parties. But how do you vet somebody? Let's assume you got an applicant, all right? Military age, military trained, can handle a gun and whatever. And he's from, I don't know, Syria or Yemen or Nigeria. How do you know, how do you vet that person to say they meet the requirements of, I don't know, not being a terrorist to come to Canada and join the military? Like, one of the big problems with all of this that people were so frustrated with in our government, in law enforcement, is we'd have these mental midgets, we call them politicians, but they're probably the stupidest people to walk the face of the earth, that would say, oh, we're going to vet people. How do you vet people from a place where there's no government and no infrastructure, let alone the corruption of the third world? I'll tell you a little story, for example. Again, this is how the world really works. For many years, I was dating somebody from Latin America. I don't want to say where. And they were from a very wealthy family. And they wanted to get a driver's license in Canada. Okay. And by the way, this is how most people who come to the Western world, this is how they operate, because they're very savvy and they're used to dealing with nonsense bureaucracy. You have not seen bureaucracy until you try to navigate in Latin America. It's just a very different world. So she wanted to get her driver's license in Canada, and there were certain requirements. She didn't have her driver's license long enough. I don't remember what it was. Maybe she needed to have it for like 3 years or something. She didn't know. Only had it for 2 or whatever. So I said, I guess you're going to have to do your driver's license from scratch here. She's, please. I'll take care of it. Okay. How did she take care of it? Well, her family, who was very wealthy, they rented the office building to their equivalent of the Transito, the Ministry of Transportation. And she knew the Minister of Transportation directly through her mom. So all she did was on her cell phone call the minister in Mexico. I guess it was a state. It was in Mexico, wherever she was from. She called the minister of her department. Departments like their equivalent of state or province. So she called the transportation minister of her department, and said, "I'm in Canada. I need a letter that shows I've had my driver's license for 5 years." And what do you say? "Ay, señora, no te preocupes. No problem. Where should I send it to?" And he drafted a quick letter. Probably had something in a database, had his secretary just pop up a letter, sign it with her name, and faxed it to the Ontario government. That's how the world really works, okay? We're so up our own asses in Canada and the United States with the procedure and the rules and whatever. Nobody follows the rules in the rest of the world. And we can't get this through our heads that there are no rules in the rest of the world. Or should I say, they can always be massaged. And so these idiots are applying this to, well, let's bring in trained fighters into Canada to join the military. The stupidest thing I've ever heard. So that's how you're going to end up with, because remember, the Islamist expertise is in political entryism, meaning getting involved in institutions and taking them over time. So you're going to see the Islamists, the radical type people are going to come to Canada. "Oh, yeah. I was a soldier in Syria for the government. I was all legit." Guy's an ISIS fighter. Comes in, give him a gun, get in the military. You know what he's going to start? He's going to do is start shooting up some bases and killing people here. They will wait until there's enough of them here because they think very long term. But that's where we're going with this stupidity. All of these people need to be these politicians need to be put on a list so they can be held personally liable for this somehow. I don't know how. We gotta figure out a way to do that, right? And by the way, this is how Canada got into the mess with all the jihadi trash that are in Canada and in our government and in the UK as well, right? Why do you think the boat people invading the UK right now take their passport and throw it into the ocean, right? Because, well, now there's no vetting. My name is so and so. How are you going to prove it? Go to the Syrian government. Can you? Yeah, we got some problems here right now. We actually have Al Qaeda's taken over the government, and we're on the verge of civil war. So we got bigger issues right now. Like, this is why the Islamists correctly think the kafirs, us in the West, are the non-believers, are morons, and we will believe anything. It's unbelievable how stupid the people are in Canadian politics. There's a few handful of select people who are intelligent, surrounded by a sea of morons, and they know it, right? Cowboy hat communism. This is always fun. Old Texas Paul. Teresa says, but somehow foreign trained doctors have to jump through the hoops for years in order to practice in Canada. Well, that's because people were gaming the system. I knew some people here when I was younger, two people in particular, they were not Canadian. They came here and emigrated, and I think their family is on whatever it was, permanent residency, whatever. And this one particular guy, I think the best grade he got in any class was maybe a D. Just not a mental giant at all. Just not a smart kid. He was nice. He's just not very smart. But he wanted to go to medical school. It's kind of like he had the same syndrome as the movie Monsters, Inc. Billy Crystal's character couldn't figure out that there's some things you just can't do. And so he wanted to be, his dad wanted him to be a doctor, and his dad wouldn't accept the fact that his friend was a moron. And like our friend even knew, he's like, yeah, I should be nowhere near medicine, but my dad's forcing me. So they went back. He was sent to go to school in his home country, and where his dad knew people, and he got a medical degree. Somehow, we don't know how. Like, we're all like, wait, you're a doctor? You're no doctor. What are you kidding me? But yeah, somehow got his MD. And what did he do? He applied in Canada. And guess what? He's a doctor. I ain't going to him. So that's where we are. Okay, so cowboy hat communism. Old Texas Paul is all over Blueski. That is the Soviet pronunciation for Blue Sky, the most Soviet social media platform on the internet. And it's more of the pacing and leading strategy that they're using to try to brainwash MAGA. So I'm gonna play this. This is cute. I got this little video here, and I think you're gonna hear it. You know what? I will put. How am I gonna do this? Well, let's find out if the Substack hears it, and I think you will. Let's. Oh yeah, I can mute it here. All right. I'm just trying to figure. I haven't plugged in the RMTP for Substack yet. I'm still figuring it out. Okay. So let's try this. I'm going to mute the mic. Well, no, if I mute that mic, no, I can't do that. That doesn't work either. Is there a way I can? Oh yeah, I can mute it just on there though. Okay. This is Old Texas Paul. We're going to call him up and we'll talk about him in a second, and then we're going to get on to Tucker, I think. All right, ready? Let's put this up here.
Supreme Court kicks Trump in the cooter, and Trump says he's going to just take $10 billion from us and give it to himself. Yeah, let's talk about both those things real quick. This Old Texas Paul. Hope your coffee's as good as mine. Hell, I hope it's better. I hope you're having a great cup of coffee today. Trump's on TV whining, saying, oh, I can't charge people a penny. I can't tariff it. That's a lie. That's a lie. He can. He just has to prove his work. He has to be accountable for it. He just can't use the IEEPA, the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, which has no mechanism to do what he's doing. There's no law that allows him to do this.
How does Old Texas Paul know anything about the IAPA? I thought it's just a guy in a cowboy hat having a cup of coffee on his balcony. What the hell does he know about the IAPA? I think that's all you need to see from it. But what's going on there? You notice, again, we mentioned this after I showed him last time. Perfectly brand new cowboy hat. It's never been used off of camera. There's not a single stain in it, as somebody had mentioned correctly. Like, you know, when you go out in the road, you go to rural communities, go to truck stop, you see people in more southern rural areas that have cowboy hats. Yeah, they're used, they're stained and whatever. Nothing. Perfectly pressed. Perfectly. Just like his shirt, perfectly pressed. Not a single mark or stain in it. It's because that is fake. That is propaganda, public relations, whatever you want to call it. And somehow that guy, Old Texas Paul, who is not really engaging at all, has 313,000 followers on Bluesky. I think it's one of the top 5 or 10 accounts on Bluesky because no one really uses it aside from a few communists. And when you look at the account, who does he follow? Well, the first 3 that come up that follow his account are Aaron Rupar, we've discussed that before, as a propagandist, Luke Skywalker, who is mentally ill, and Rise Up Women 2026, which is, you know, communist collectivist extremism. So this is all part of a network. It is a network of propaganda, and they're practicing on Bluesky to try to brainwash MAGA people or more populist people for them to come over to the side of collectivism. But what he's wearing, that is a costume. It's nothing more. It's just a costume. And did you see the persuasion tactic he's using? Pacing and leading. Oh, I'm just like you. I'm having coffee. I hope you like your coffee as much as I like my coffee. It's a great coffee, right? He's trying to pace you and emotionally connect with you and make you think, oh, he's just like me. Not you necessarily, but people in a certain demographic. Maybe people from Huntsville, Alabama. I don't know. But this is brainwashing in real time. This is what it looks like. That's the brainwashing strategy itself. So if you go on the Bluesky, find Texas Paul and give him a hard time, because that is just a scam artist on the level of the Nigerian prince scam. That is how dishonest it is, right? Yeah, urban cowboy. Marine's laughing. Exactly. So anyways, all right, next we have the, this was very interesting yesterday. Now, there's some people. I know there's some people who are not going to like it, and if you get upset, you're going to. That's a sign of cognitive dissonance, right? That you're being put into. I call it evaded state. People call it evaded ego. Kind of emerges. However you want. It's the same basic thing. And you want to be careful that you don't slip into the 7 signs of cognitive dissonance that we've discussed here before. But if you find that you get emotionally angry or triggered by this, then that is your indication that you have been subjected to some sort of collectivist brainwashing. Because when you're not, you can hear criticism about people that you like, but you're able to control your anger by just being dismissive and saying, well, yeah, I don't really care. I don't really agree. Or the most enlightened is, okay, I understand what you're saying, but I still don't agree. That's just kind of not my thing, right? So just to be aware, for those of you, look for the marker if you end up slipping into cognitive dissonance and getting angry. It's probably because you've been subjected to a narrative through repetition. And in fact, I'm willing to bet money on that. That's what many of you, those of you who may get upset at this, have been subjected to. So yesterday, Tucker Carlson did an interview with Mike Huckabee, the ambassador to Israel. I think it's Pastor Mike Huckabee, if I'm not mistaken. It was really odd. It was stunningly odd. A couple of things. So first, he made that the claim that this is the propaganda that's come from the Muslim Brotherhood for quite some time, because Qatar is a Muslim Brotherhood country ever since Yusuf Qaradawi set up in there many years ago, and was the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, and basically over a long period of time lobbied the royal family for them to join and be part of the Muslim Brotherhood cause, which is to dominate the entire world. That's the Hassan al-Banna, Said Qutb, both of them, al-Madudi as well. Their goal was to dominate the entire world. Just really crazy people, right? But it was very interesting to see him, and very odd to see him make, trying to sell it as a Christian, make the same claim that the Muslim Brotherhood tries to brainwash people with. When he says, he said in this area, he said, there's more Christians in Qatar than there are in the state of Israel. Now, first thing to understand is when you think of the Muslim Brotherhood, because many people I know, you don't know what it is, I want you to think of ISIS and the mafia together. That's what Muslim Brotherhood is. Really extreme crap. And started in the 1920s and has been growing unchecked. And that is the green part of the Red-Green Alliance. And yes, people talk about Iran and the Shia and whatever. Well, guess what? They all started at the same epicenter, despite the fact they're Sunni and Shia. Yeah, they'll war with each other, but the priority is going to be warring with the Kafirs, right? In Dar al-Fukar, in the House of War, which is not a Muslim country. So remember, the Muslim Brotherhood, very, very serious. And that is a big part of what's causing chaos around the world on university campuses, all the protesting, all the free Palpatine BS. That is all Muslim Brotherhood money that is perpetuating that. If you hear people that are saying that, they're either knowingly often or sometimes unknowingly regurgitating Muslim Brotherhood propaganda, and they utilize political entryism, right? I used to see this on the university campus all the time because we had an MSA established there. MSA, Muslim Student Association, is a Muslim Brotherhood front group. It's the first above ground Muslim Brotherhood front group in the Western world. And what they would do is they would recruit Muslim students, radicalize them, and then have them join other student groups, whether it's the vegan group, the vegetarian group, the karate group, the chess group, and whatever, and try to radicalize other students around Israel because they're obsessed with Israel, they're obsessed with Jewish conspiracies. That's where the Muslim Brotherhood is. And in the Middle East, the Jewish conspiracies are like normal discourse and have been for many years, and they've now brought that to the West. That's now normal discourse here. So in this particular case, Israel has 185,000 Christians, the establishment of the modern state of Israel, when it was handed back to them, there were 35,000 Christians. So they've grown significantly. Michael Huckabee mentions that. And actually, the largest property owner in the city of Jerusalem is the Orthodox Church. That's right. The Israeli parliament is built on land owned by the Orthodox Church and is leased to the government of Israel because it is a Western country, just like Canada, the United States, and much of Europe, as long as Europe, for however much time Europe has, right? So, and by comparison, so Israel has 185,000 Christian citizens. Qatar has exactly, wait, I have it here. Hold on, I'm going to drop down my name. Qatar has exactly zero. 0.0, if you get the reference. There are 0.0 Christian citizens of Qatar. And the few, I think they have 6 churches there. They're actually fenced off in a compound. They're not allowed to pray outside of this little compound. And those are for migrant workers, from the Philippines, other parts of Southeast Asia, who go there for work, often to be, personal care workers, right? So basically, they're migrant slaves. So the Christians in Qatar are migrant slaves. And this was a problem leading up to the World Cup. But, money talks, and you can be lefty as you want until you wave a pile of money in front of them, and all of a sudden, whatever. So Mike Huckabee asked how many Christians were in Qatar, and Tucker said he didn't know. Wait, well, didn't he say that? Remember Ted Cruz? He didn't know the exact number of Iranians in Iran, and he did that. Oh, gotcha. Well, here's Tucker in the exact same position. But whatever. Okay, that's he's doing his thing. That's not what I'm getting to. I'm getting to something more important. But then Tucker started to do the Jews aren't the real Jews crap, like from the mid-century Germans. Not even the mid-century Germans. I shouldn't say that, because at least they knew who they were trying to slaughter. They were real enough for almost 6 million of them to be exterminated, along with the other 1.5 million people who were various other identifiable groups, individuals, enemies of the state. So, this whole mechanism, as we know, we don't have to go over that. Everybody everybody with a brain understands what happened leading up to World War II. And now he believes in the mid-century German, eugenics techniques, that everybody who's Jewish needs to take a DNA test. Okay, that's a very odd and Hitlerian perspective. What about people who are adopted and are completely integrated into the Jewish people? Because there are many of us, by the way. So he's lost his mind. Well, I don't think that's what it is. I'm going to get to that in a second. But really creepy crap coming out of Tucker Carlson. And what's worse about it is all the smears against him over all those years. He cited Wikipedia in trying to do a gotcha with Mike Huckabee. I guess Tucker Carlson has not read his own Wikipedia, has he? And all the smears against him, and how he's a bigot and a white supremacist and this and that. So it's funny how it's convenient when it benefits him. So I guess the Wikipedia about Tucker Carlson is completely accurate. Like, which one is it, lefty? You can't suck and blow. I said this before when we started, that the lefties cannot suck and blow, which is, there you go, Tucker Carlson, which is, he's as lefty as they come. But I don't know if it's by choice. So I want to show you something. And I may play it 1 or 2 times. A short little video. It's a segment from that interview. And I think it's what some people have missed and may not have said. So I'm going to try this. By the way, I hope Old Texas Paul came through in the audio, because I'm still trying to figure out this system. I'm going to play the audio. You'll hear it on Substack, and you'll see it when it's re-uploaded as well. So let me go to here. I hate when I have an itchy nose, and yes, I have allergies, because people always try to interpret one thing that it's not. All right, here we go. This is the little segment. Okay, we'll play it right now.
Job back, that he would burn them down.
Okay.
So he goes out. No, let me finish this because it's important for you to understand.
Right.
So this guy then goes out and makes up this story that he witnessed IDF soldiers shooting a little boy.
I don't know that he made it up. He seemed to believe it to me. It's possible he's wrong. I've been wrong many times.
Well,
Did you see that? Did you hear that? You don't even need to see it, but I'm going to play it one more time. This is one of those, you didn't see it, but your brain did. Watch one more time, and we'll talk about it in a second.
Job back that he would burn them down.
Okay.
So he goes out. No, let me finish this because it's important for you to understand.
Right.
So this guy then goes out and makes up this story that he witnessed IDF soldiers shooting a little boy.
I don't know that he made it up. He seemed to believe it to me. It's possible he's wrong. I've been wrong many times.
Well,
all right, I'm going to explain this, and maybe you catched it, right? Yes, I know, Greg. I still haven't set up the RMTP. I'm still working with it in the Substack. You just need to hear it, right? And I'll explain what you saw. No audio or video on your end. Okay. All right, well, figure it out next time. I'm going to re-upload it, and I'll explain this segment. It's only 10 seconds, so don't worry about it. So basically, what happened was this. When you watch... Hold on. You know what? Let me try this one more time. You know what, Greg? Thank you for telling me. I'm going to try something, and let's see if... Oh, yes. Hold on. Maybe I can share screen. I'm going to do something special. Allow to share window. Okay. Do this one. Okay. Oh, that doesn't work. Share entire screen. Okay. Can you? Yep. Okay. I think you can see it now. We'll try this. All right. We'll do this one more time and tell me if you see this on Substack, because I don't want you guys to miss out on this as well. You're seeing kind of the back end, but whatever. All right.
Job back that he would burn them down.
Okay.
So he goes out. No, let me finish this because it's important for you to understand.
Right.
So this guy then goes out and makes up this story that he witnessed IDF soldiers shooting a little boy.
I don't know that he made it up. He seemed to believe it to me. It's possible he's wrong. I've been wrong many times.
Well,
all right, let me go over to Substack and see if you guys saw that. Did you see that? I hope you saw that. Yes, can see, no audio. That doesn't make sense. See video, but no sound. But you can hear me right now. I'm using the same mic. Okay, I will get this sorted. I actually also I put it in the Substack notes, so you can go back and watch it, but I can explain it anyways. All right. I saw it, no audio. Well, you'll also get something from that too. So let me explain this. You'll notice when first thing is Tucker starts bouncing out of his seats and says no. And says, oh, okay, whatever. And he gets really nervous. That's usually a subconscious tell that not only he's uncomfortable, but he really wants to get away from the situation. Okay? Which, he'd been slaughtered already by Mike Huckabee, who wasn't having any of his nonsense, but he did it in a very respectful way, which becomes problematic. But, and I posted in the Substack notes, I put it on X, and you can go back and watch it. I put it in locals. So everybody subscribing, you can see this little excerpt of 20 seconds. This is the part I think people are missing with all of this, okay? He says, I don't know if that's what he's saying. He seemed to believe it. I've been wrong many times. That's the pacing and leading. And then there's the dismissive, okay, and shifts his body. That is intentional. Those things together, when you package them, you got to watch it a few times to really see what I'm going to get at in a second. And I know many of you may not see it. You have to go back and look at it, and you may not know this person. But when he says, I don't know that he's saying that, he seemed to believe it. I have been wrong many times. And then the dismissive, okay, okay, whatever, right? To try to diffuse what he was going through, that Huckabee was winning. Is that Tucker Carlson's baseline body language? Think about all the times you watched Tucker Carlson on Fox News. Is that him? Is that his baseline? It's not. That's a different person. No, I'm not doing the Alex Jones thing. It's the same person, but the behavior is entirely different, right? The mannerisms, what he says, the attempt to be dismissive but not owning the situation. On Fox News, yeah, he was almost like a lawyer. He knew what the answer was going to be to every question, sort of thing. He was prepared, and he was in a dominant position. Here he's in a submissive position. He's mimicking someone. Who's he mimicking? Who does he look exactly like? Who says this all the time on this same topic with the same body language and uses the exact same words? I don't know that's what he's saying, that he said that. He seems to believe it. I've been wrong many times. I don't know that that's what he's saying. He seemed to believe it. I've been wrong many times. Who says that all the time with very similar body language? Think about it. You know who I see? When I watch that, there's somebody I see. I don't see Tucker Carlson. I see comic Dave Smith. Those are the exact words and tactics that Dave Smith uses every time. It's not a comic, by the way. There's a lot more going on there, dating back to political entryism into the Liberal Party, Libertarian Party, over the past decade, as I've learned. When you are watching Tucker Carlson, and I'm not blaming Dave Smith, by the way, I'm going to get to this in a second. When you are watching, or at least when I'm watching this, and you watch the body language and listen to the exact same phraseology that Dave Smith uses, that tells me, having been trained in this stuff, that is not organic. That is not Tucker Carlson. That is not his baseline. And baseline becomes very, very important for interpreting someone's behavior. So whose baseline is that? This is not organic behavior. You know what this is? That is exactly what brainwashing looks like. When somebody has a certain baseline, and it's not like people don't know and are not familiar with Tucker Carlson. You have thousands of hours that you can go back and replay and watch his actual behavior. This is not it. This is somebody completely different. This is what happens when you are brainwashed by probably the most skilled brainwasher on the planet. And why is it that he has exactly the same word selection, phraseology, mannerism, and behavior mimicking Dave Smith? Because they've both been targeted by the same person. That's what's going on. So this is way bigger than anyone realizes or is telling you. And I think I know exactly who it is and how they're doing it and why they're doing it. Why? Because I and Scott Adams have been trained in the same skill set. And I know exactly what has to be done to somebody like Tucker Carlson to alter his worldview. So I'm going to start doing more. I'm going to start doing on locals at some point, and we'll share it with the Substack people because there's a infrastructure we're building right now. I think I'm going to try what Scott was doing with the micro lessons and map this out over time. Because if I just tell people how this works, you're going to slip into, the cognitive denial and just say, well, that can't be. That's not. It's really hard to believe until you've been trained in this and understand how it works. That is not Tucker Carlson's that's not the same person. Like when people say he looks like a, Mike Huckabee says he looks like a completely different person, because he is. Because his wants and desires have been replaced, which is why he seems like a maniac. And he's not the only one. Now, there are people who are emotionally tied to Tucker Carlson, and they can't see it because they liked him for so long. They watched him every night for years and years. They can't accept the fact that this has been done to him. But this is why many people, for everyone from Scott Adams to Sam Harris, they dispute the idea of free will. And I'm kind of all over the map on this. I'm a little bit more, it's a nuanced conversation, like many of these things are. But go back and watch that little excerpt. I put it in the Substack notes, like on notes under my profile, and I put it on Twitter X. Go watch those 22 seconds? Go watch those 22 seconds. Listen, you got to watch it a few times. And then if you have to, go watch Dave Smith with Douglas Murray. You're going to see exactly the same body language, the same mannerisms, the same word selections. That's what's going on. Very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And this is an attack on Trump. And I think Trump knows it. And that's why he's playing it the way he is. Trump is not a stupid person. And some of the people around him are brilliant. And they are not blind. People in politics understand better than most people when they're being attacked, usually 3 or 4 steps ahead of time. Once they hear somebody is talking to somebody, then they're really like, okay, something's up. There's going to be an attack. Anyways, so I hope that is helpful. Today is Saturday. We're late, but I wanted to get to this point because I think this is important. I think once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it. And it'll be much easier to read this sort of behavior, not just amongst Tucker. You're going to see it amongst other people that are saying some crazy things. And by the way, yes, this is foreign. This is a foreign, I hate to use the term op. It's a foreign subversion strategy of the United States that has never stopped. And it is continuing, right? And why does he hyper-focus on Israel? Because Israel is the only country in the world constantly engaged in a kinetic war with the very Islamists who are trying to destroy the United States from within. For example, your mayor. Wildflower says, who is pulling Tucker's and Smith's strings? Well, it's not just them. It's a few people, and it's not just one group or one country. It's a couple of them that are in the news frequently. But we'll talk more about that moving forward. Let me figure out how to do the micro lessons so I can navigate this with you. I'm going to try to do them before I go to Florida. Or worst case scenario, maybe I'll start them when I'm in Florida. I don't know. I have to go down there to give a talk and meet with some friends and stuff, spend some time with some people. But I hope that is helpful. And let's make sure, I hope this was this negative? I don't know. I think when things are informative, they're positive. And I hope this sheds a little bit of light on some of the craziness that we're going on. Because once you see it, then all of a sudden things don't get so scary. It's like with blackface Trudeau. Once you understand the philosophical framing of his world, the postmodern view, then nothing's scary because you can plan things before, you know what he's going to do before he does, right? So anyways, I hope that is helpful. I'm way over time. I'm at an hour and 20 minutes, but I'm trying to keep things within an hour because I know people just have said to me, try to keep it within an hour. And then we'll figure out when to do the micro lessons around this. I'll start with this sort of stuff. And then we're going to figure out a time to do a night stream. So, and Risa, I got your message. Yes, the music, I will package everything. I'm going to put it into Spotify at some point. That will include the theme song here and a whole bunch of other tracks and stuff like that. And I'll explain what I'm doing with that. Once it's all released, that will be a fun little coffee in the morning that we'll do to discuss that. Have an amazing day. And guess what? Tomorrow at 10:30, we'll be here too. Jessie might not be because I know she goes to church. but I do love you too, and I do know you watch it afterwards after you go to church. And we'll see you in the Discord. I'm going to be doing some work on the Discord today, and I'm going to try to have a meeting with Tao and figure out how we're going to organize that a little bit better. And I want to thank all of you for spending your time with me and having a cup of coffee, because now I got to get my head buried in some work and have a productive day. I hope you do too. Take some time to relax. You're all amazing. Oh, and by the way, I don't know, some video on I've already crossed, not one of these live streams, but I don't know, like 1.5 million views for this week's total accumulation videos on YouTube. I don't know how it's happening on YouTube, but I guess YouTube's picking up the channel at this point as well. So we'll see when we look at the analytics. I love you all. I got to run. It's getting late for me as well as it's for you. Have an awesome day. Be good to people. And I will talk to you all very, very soon. And let me just shut this down.